We in Seattle are going to apologize in advance for the noise of the thousands of fans lining up for our Seahawks parade in downtown Seattle. I don't think we're really going to be affected, but I just wanted to tout our team and let you know that that may happen. So today we're going to hear from 4 LEAP sites about their innovations in building care teams. But before we do that, I'd like to encourage you all to actively use the chat boxes located on your screen. If you don't see the chat box on your screen, to see it, you might need to move your cursor to the extreme top of your computer screen and click on the chat box icon that will appear there. And in that chat box, please note the Send To line. I think we've corrected the problem. If you click on the downward arrow to display the menu, please scroll down and select all attendees so that hopefully this time everybody can see your comments and questions. So today we're going to have a few minutes opening the webinar with these instructions and a bit of an overview of the agenda. And then Ed's going to give just a brief introduction, and then we're going to hear from 3 panelists. We're going to hear from Dr. Charles Berger, first from Martins Point, and then we're going to hear from Audrey Lum at Union Health Center, and finally Jason Cunningham at West County Health Centers. So thank you very much for your attention today. We really hope you enjoy this discussion. We're going to hear from the presenters, and Ed is going to pose some questions for each presenter. So please know that after each presenter gives their brief presentation, there's going to be lots of opportunity for everybody to ask questions and make comments. A brief time again at the end, but we're going to really focus on each presentation in turn with your questions. So again, please chat your questions and comments into the chat box. All right, Ed, take it away.
Judith, and good morning, everybody. The of PCT LEAP, as you all know, is PT, the primary care team. And that's why this particular webinar is, I think, so central to what this whole project is about. Why team so important? Well, there are many reasons. Patients need multiple points of contact. Patients in now multiple chronic conditions and preventive care situations. One of the strongest interventions is the involvement of the non-provider and fellow team members in care to the biggest reductions in hemoglobin A1C, the biggest reductions in blood pressure, improvements in immunization rates, and so on. So, in webinar, we want to focus on several questions related to building an effective primary care team. Who's on it? What do? How do they work together? How do you go from a collection of employees in the same organization to a coherent, functioning team? Those are the kinds of issues that we want to talk about. I want to encourage everybody who's on the call to feel free to ask questions. Do you want all the questions in the chat box, or can people ask questions orally?
Ed, we've got everybody to limit noise from this many connections. We've got everybody on mute unless we unmute them individually. So we really would appreciate the questions coming into the chat box. So feel free to chat to all attendees at any time during a conference, during a presentation or after, so that we can line up your questions, and that will be to note the questions during the talk, and then we can ask them during the time for Q&A.
I'll keep an eye on the chat box, and then without further ado, let me turn it over to Dr. Charles Berger from Martins Point. Charlie, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We thank you.
All right. We're having a little trouble connecting before, but we're here. Okay. Do we have the slides up? There we go. So let's start. We have a document called the Principles of Practice, which we use to define a set of principles about how we're going to operate. And so I just picked out the two that I think are pertinent to today's discussion about building a team. I think they're explanatory, but I think that we recognize different levels of skill and responsibility in our organization. We do not recognize differences in status between professional and management support staff. And these lines become blurred as we develop as a team and organization. And the second one defines how to look at what people can do in the office. So I think those are probably set the tone for how to operate as a team and set the expectations both for leadership and providers and the team. The next, please. Simply just list the functions in the practice. We have obviously our providers, medical director, and administrator. We do collaborative care nurses, and these are RNs who are trained to function at a much higher level in managing chronic disease and do really the majority of the work in helping our complex chronic care patients. Got caring patient service representatives who have functioned at a very high level, often using computer-based clinical decision support to be able to help patients directly rather than having to pass it through to a nurse or to a physician. And then we have our clinical support team, medical assistants, and phlebotomists. Again, we expect our medical assistants to operate at a much higher level, getting the majority of the information and visit that we're going to be operating with. And we'd like to take that as far as they're willing to try to go. And then we have a project specialist that helps us with our process improvement. Next slide, please. And I say through these pretty quickly because I know Ed wanted to have plenty of time for discussion and make it a little more of a discussion than just an overall presentation. Pretty vigorous. We involve the whole team in interviewing and selecting new team members. And what we're looking for are certain behavioral characteristics. As far as I can tell, is that a reliable person, are they thorough, how efficient do they operate? And they operate in this kind of environment, think independently. And the training is also pretty rigorous. So rigorous action, rigorous training. It takes us probably 6 or 8 weeks to train a new PR. That's proficiency and competency based, one-on-one with a trainer, until as they move through each of the modules that they're expected to learn. If they can 2 weeks, that's great. If it takes them a little longer, then it takes them a little bit longer. As fast as they can demonstrate their competence. And the thing goes clinical side when we're training new clinical support people. Next. Everybody in the practice, everything. certainly change, which is continuous and moves at a pretty fast pace in our practice. We know that we can't, if you're not changing, you're not improving, and you're going backwards. It requires a fair number of meetings. At times, that can cause some grumbling, but on the other hand, if you want to have a say in how things are operated in the practice, then you be willing to put in some extra time and take some responsibility that we give you to participate. We really push how people can operate in terms of their requirements, in terms of licensure. It's been somewhat of an uphill battle. I've had to spend some time dealing with the state to get approval for how our collaborative care nurses operate in the life cycle of our practice. We battled providers who thought we were unethical about the way we were using our support staff. So it's been an easy journey in getting to where we are now. Everybody's responsible for system improvement. It can be any place, and that's part of what we do. We build some into our morning huddles so that we have quick learnings, and then if we have a major process improvement, we've got a very structured way for moving that process along and participating. Everyone participate. I've spent a fair amount of time on communication. To hire overly responsible codependent people. We like the responsibility part, but on the other hand, conflict comes with some difficulty. So we do have training around having what we would say would be crucial conversations, how to draw attention to a person's behavior without calling him an idiot, and try to reach resolution for all team members. Okay, and then the next slide, please. Our function as leaders is sort of gaining vision and keeping that in front of us. I'd like to see everybody have their own personal vision. What they'd like to do. If people have career directions that they'd like to see, we do everything we can to help them achieve those goals. I think the leaders have to subjugate themselves to the principles of the system. The principles that I mentioned before is that, and everybody is expected to adhere to them, including providers. And if we don't, we can expect to hear back from somebody about that. I think I reread a book that I'd read some time ago, which, if you want, just really good description of a team system like that. Get a copy of Phil Jackson's Sacred Hoops. When he took over as the coach of the Chicago Bulls, he had the task of pulling it together and getting somebody like Michael Jordan to subjugate himself to the goals of the team. So into the formal presentation, and Ed, do you want to take questions or discussion points now, or wait till the end?
Let me ask a couple of questions, and I again encourage everybody, if you have questions of Charlie, put them on the chat box. But Charlie, you said early on that we do not support or recognize differences. That sounds great. What would, if somebody walked into Martin's Point, what would they see that's different those lines from traditional practice?
First of all, you see people doing funds at a much higher level. You might see a peer give actions to a physician about things that they needed done. You might see the physicians pitching in to do things on their own if somebody isn't available to help. Everything is focused on how can we get the best outcome for the patient, and if that means has to clean the toilet one day, then that's what you do. So I think that's really really the main difference. I mean, obviously, our philosophy of at least leadership is more a servant leadership. Sort of pure organizational structure upside down.
Thanks. Holly has a question. Can you say more about the role of the collaborative care RN? And I had a question along those lines that you could answer at the same time, which is, you say they're functioning at a higher level. Can you how it's higher? Thanks.
Sure. We're often seeing people that they're very familiar with because they, but they are complex chronic care patients. So and a lot of that involves use techniques, getting people to change, take better care of themselves, understand their disease. So there's a tremendous amount of education that goes into that. I've been trained in motivational interviewing. So we meet in the morning. They may see their visits are longer. They do all of the scribing for the visit, and for the most part, we've created a plan in that huddle before we get started in the morning. We review all the tests that have come in. We get an idea of what we're going to need to do in the course of that visit. So they're spending 40 minutes with the patient. I spend about 5 minutes with the patient. It's just what I need to do to complete documentation. Sometimes some things come up that we really have to talk over. And then for people who are new with the problem, they probably do a fair amount of out-of-office telephoning. Again, trying to educate, get people to understand their disease better. So it is a collaboration. Just bring a particular, their training is around this. And so they bring that, allow them to use that full nursing background around education in the course of an office visit. And we play the supportive role in that regard.
Oh, go ahead.
There are some questions here that aren't appearing to everybody, so please, everybody, pay attention and send your questions to all attendees so we can all see them. There was a question from Jason and Dana. We would love to see your communication training. Is that available, Charlie?
Yeah, it's really pretty simple. It's and people have probably seen different forms of this, but it is. It's a thing that focused around being able to deliver what we call iMessages. Peter Schulte. It comes from Peter Schulte's team handbook, and when you do this or act this way, I feel like such and such, and this is how I would like that interaction to go in the future, or some variety of that. In other words, it's getting people to focus on the behavior of the situation, and also giving the person who was the focus of this an opportunity to give their side of the story. So think about it, and we have people practice that. What's our number? 30 times in the first weeks.
30 days.
Yeah, 30 times in 30 days. It's not a meeting. We also use a book called Crucial Conversations. Which is popular.
I don't know if you could see the question that was also asked out.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Charlie, people would like to know a little bit more about the patient services representative. What's their educational background and a little bit more about what they do?
They come from all backgrounds. Lee, who you all met, being out in Seattle, she came from Starbucks. Again, we look for certain characteristics. If people have a background in a service organization, that certainly helps. So there aren't any criteria other than our sense that people are going to meet those behavioral characteristics that I listed in my talk. Now, what allows them to at this higher level? Well, it is the training. A good part of that training is around what do you do when someone calls in with such and such? And we have a tool we use, which is a clinical decision support tool that I've been developing over the last 20-some years. We call it a triage coupler because it's based on Larry Weed's PKC coupler system. So that can give them instructions about how to handle minor illness, when to give home advice, when to bring somebody in. If you're going to bring in, do they need a test before they come in? How long should the visit be based on the nature of the complaint, so that you're trying to match quality with the amount of time. It allows them to fill probably 80% of the prescription refills without asking us. And then there's a myriad of minor things that come in. Once a scopolamine patch for a trip or need Valium before a MRI or something like that they can just handle by protocol. They treat minor illnesses such as uncomplicated urinary tract infections, women. So that I think it's that tool and the discipline that you use that tool every time. So they're not flying by the seat of their pants. And able to usually we've had a little of this recently, but generally we update that every 6 months, so that the new missions are added if we crossed new information in the literature.
We've got about 2 minutes. More question?
One more question, Charlie. Another participant would like to know quickly what the staffing ratios are for these various roles.
Oh, okay.
Paul's going to do a little bit of math there. We've got about 17, a little over 17 full staff members, and our panel size is around 3,400, and we've got 3 providers. Now, that one of the things that really skews that is that we have 3 nurses operating in this collaborative session, so they are actually revenue generators,
right?
In and of themselves, because those are complex visits that we're able to code at pretty high level, 99214s and 99215s.
The number of questions coming in is terrific. I think this is marvelous. I'm sorry that we can't address all of them at once, but I think this will be an excellent opportunity for us to get you all introduced to the Leap Commons mechanism, and I promise that we will find out the answers to all the questions that were posed on this webinar and get questions from the Martins Point Care team and post them on Commons for your edification.
Next speaker.
Yeah, please.
Next up is Audrey Lum from Union Health Center. Audrey, all yours.
Okay. So do we have my slides?
We're fine, Audrey.
Okay, so we'll just go to slide 1, the second slide. We began working in teams in like 2005, and our first team started as just a small pilot team with 3 providers and their medical assistants, 2 health coaches, 1 patient support staff, and a clinical administrator. And following 2 years of testing on health coach development and training that included creating our own curriculum and drawing best practices from the many PDSAs that were done on this small team, it was decided to divide this pilot team into and place the members, all champions by this time, onto 2 newly created primary care teams. We thought it allowed the best spread of best practices and team-based care across the health center. 2 primary care teams are larger, but they all have the same representation as our original pilot team. During the meeting, our members rotate through 5 roles that have been identified by the team. timer, note taker, facilitator, check-in, kudos, and snacks. The check provides the team with identification of things working and not working. Kudos provides acknowledging and encouraging one another, and provides a relaxed environment for the team. Rules set the tone for the meeting. The team follows agenda, and agenda items are issues that arise hindering the team's ability to work efficiently and effectively and affect patient care. There's a time for announcements and discussion of new items and a breakout session. This allows for the larger team to divide into smaller work groups, and there is also time for them to return to the larger team to provide and discuss their results from the out session. The team find that this allows members to develop to work with each other, to work on their registries, to brainstorm new and creative ideas on how to solve issues. It also allows them to work on individual smaller projects. One of the things that they've recently done are updating education display boards for their patients and displays of new information on health services. He strives to incorporate a building exercise in all of their meetings and to evaluate their meetings at the end. The overarching goal is the team to move towards improving together and measuring what they are improving. Can you, please? Care teams are multidisciplinary and are clinical working teams. One piece to successful recruiting and training of our team members is having protected time. Protected time scheduled for 2 team meetings and 2 curriculum training sessions for the A's each month. Training for teams start during the interview process. We look for people interested in working in a team-based practice. And members receive a brief orientation about our teams and the building blocks that make up patient-centered medical home. We also heavily on the teams and to incorporate the team model into daily work. We also had teams that included members from the primary care teams and also non-team staff. One example of a project that had to be addressed was phone and registration issues. Because this was an organizational-wide project and it required much more time that could be spent on during the primary care meetings, we decided to use staff from both primary care teams and non-team members. Results were regularly communicated back to the primary care teams and to the rest of the organization through monthly department meetings. We find that communication is key to keeping the teams motivated and working on the same page and just to the next step, their goals. We've had EMR since 1999, and we've developed and customized templates that support care for all of our staff, especially, for providers and our health coaches. The templates are very helpful in standardizing work processes, and it allows all of our staff to work at the top of their licensure or certification. Okay. Nutritionists are not on the primary care teams, and that's because we only have a part-time nutritionist and one of FTEs of a social worker. However, they are crucial to the teams and they provide support for each team. An example of this is the health coaches meet monthly with the social worker to discuss difficult patients. The nutritionist and social worker are invited with huddles and team meetings as needed. And nutritionist plays a very large part in our trainings for the medical assistants in self-management and motivational interviewing. Here at the Union Health Center is team-based. We do take a top-down approach, and patient-centered, care is strongly supported by senior management. Everyone's empowered have a say in helping to improve processes their team. Contrary to the traditional model of care, our patients have developed relationships with many different members of their teams, not just the providers. So we find on any given day, our patients are calling and asking to speak to their the medical assistant who's working with them or the health coaches in providing care.
Audrey, I'd like to give you just a little bit of a warning that we're about 2 minutes away from the time that you should be ending.
Okay.
Switching to questions.
Yeah, okay, we can move to the last slide. Medical Home Support Team, also known as the MHST, is made up of representatives from senior management, support staff, and team leaders. They meet weekly, and it's here that the team leaders can report on their team meetings and also receive the support they need to make decisions as a team. The team leaders, we just do this because we feel that we don't want to wait too long for the team leaders to be able to give a response back to their members when they're, we don't want them to lose their creativity and to, their work time. So, we find that it helps that senior leadership can be, involved in this because they can be at all the team meetings. And it also just keeps everyone on the same page and informed about what we're doing across the organization.
I don't have a question in the box, so I'll start. Could you tell us a little bit more about the health coach? Again, their background, how you train them, what they do.
Well, I actually have a health coach here, Monica Gillen. She's also one of our emerging leaders, and I'd like to head over to the microphone.
So when we start here as medical assistant, through educational trainings, through our own curriculum training that the UHC has established here, we go to meetings twice a month, and a period of 9 months, and we become health coaches. And more 9 months of a training.
And Monica, are you trained, for example, in motivational interviewing?
Yeah, part of our training, we get trained on diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, smoking cessation, and motivational interviewing is one of our the trainings that we constantly, as health coaches, get every year.
Any questions from participants on the webinar? Watching Audrey, you get the sense that team building is important.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you do to build teams? Do you have a formal approach?
Well, a lot of times the team takes over that, team building. So what they do is they incorporate into their, trainings and their orientation and just their regular team meetings, building and team building.
There's been various team building activities throughout the year, and then the work they do on project improvement is another form of team building by rallying around specific things like improving diabetes outcomes and breaking down those outcomes into specific improvement projects. All of that and the registry work that they do are means to build the teams and look at the successes and improve that are the improvement.
Yeah, team building also, it starts kind of at the teamlet level, where providers are working with their medical assistants, and then the team meetings help to kind of really make those teamlets cohesive because they have the breakout sessions. They may work on smaller projects, some like their registries, but then larger implement projects, sort of like things that are going wrong, during the day on, an operational scale, they'll bring to the meetings and then, and, support staff will kind of brainstorm ideas about how they can make things, improved better.
Still, there's another question about health coaches. Do you at the end of the provider visit, do you have your own visits? How do you see patients?
In the morning, we attend all daily huddles throughout the Union Health Center, all the providers. And we have a panel, we have an appointment book, a panel. We schedule patients in our book just like providers. And that's how we keep track of who's going to come and see us. We also schedule phone follow-up for the patient, so we know who we have to call on a daily basis. But basically, we keep track by having a panel, an appointment book, just for health coaches.
There's another question about the health coaches. Kaylee asked, how do you backfill for them, and how much time do you give your MAs for protected work time?
Time?
No, they said protected work time. Maybe that means.
Okay, they're getting trained. So the 2 team meetings per month are 2 hours each, and then hours a month
education.
And education for just the MAs, and during that time, the providers have administrative time.
Yeah, I think that what I mean is, how much time do your MAs have to do their kind of maybe follow-up work with coaching or something like that, so protected time to do these tasks that don't involve rooming patients or other more traditional activities for MAs? And then if they have this protected time, how do you backfill for them?
The difference here might be that we have health coaches and we have MAs, and once an MA has had enough experience in participating in the curriculum, they can graduate to being health coaches. Once you become a health coach, your day is spent seeing patients, doing blood pressure checks, and managing the appointment book for the health coach. On the other hand, work with the program, what we call teamlets, and they are responsible to work together to work with on that level. And then the more complex chronic patients get referred over to the health coach. Patients with uncontrolled hypertension maybe are scheduled for a blood pressure check and education. And those can be 20 to 40 minutes. Right. And we see specifically the health coach. And then through the huddle, who should see the health coach that day or be followed by the health coaches on a more regular basis.
Which is for each primary care team.
Ed, there are several more questions here, but I think we have time for only one. So do you want to choose which one that is?
I'm trying to
up with the questions as well. This question is from Marie Shaw. Can you give an example of an issue that the medical home support team has addressed and how they addressed it?
Gosh, there's so many. Registration. There's a backup of the time it takes to register new patients, and we've sometimes had a large amount of new patients per day, and the teams were bringing that as an issue that was slowing, backing up providers and their ability to see the people timely. So, MHST discussed how to improve registration, and that's where that other small little team broke out to do a testing of how to more rapidly register patients when they come in, get more information up front before the patient comes in. So we did a different test to try and improve the amount of time it takes to register a patient so that the teams could see their patients more timely.
And so from a management perspective, when the teams told us they did this little PDSA and they said, we need more scanners at the front desk. Well, that's an executive decision that had to be made, and it was made at MHST to say, okay, how many scanners do you need? Because they were scanning in the ID cards and then be able to do eligibility for the patients the new patients walking in. So them new scanners, and then one other thing that came out of that was they wanted a separate area for new registration versus established patients coming in for their, appointments. So we created a separate area with signage for new patient registration, so that we could, straight established and new, and I think it has helped a lot, to spend a little more time with new patients and, just keep arriving our established patients. So that's
Thank you,
Audrey. That's perfect. Marie says thanks as well. So
okay.
we really need to move on again, but again, we have lots of questions. So we'll do the follow-up with this team and get the questions to you on our LEAP Commons. And introduce Jason.
Yes, our next presentation is going to come from West County Health Center, and Jason, I think you're accompanied by others. So you want to tell us who's with you?
Sure. Both of us have had a little bit of trouble hearing every once in a while. So if for some reason we're getting cut off, then just raise a hand or something so we can call in a different way. I'm joined by Dana Valley, who's now our Associate Director of Quality Management. Dana started an extern at one of our sites and moved into the lead medical assistant and then became our agency medical assistant. And she hit those all out of the park, and now she's part of our Associate Director of Medical Quality Management. I asked her to participate because she really helped lead the development of our roles, particularly for our medical assistants, but also being able to role specify and train and do some of those things. Jeremy Robinalt is our Associate Director of Customer Service. She's basically our lead front office representative in our agency. She is sick at home with her children, so we say thank you for offering, and then and I'll try to add what she would add for this talk. So if you move to the next slide. So I'm going to start with our team composition.
Yeah, we inform our teams. We had to impanel our patients. I did that, I think, in 2007. So all of our patients are assigned to a particular provider in our electronic health record, and then we form team lists. So all of our medical assistants also became assigned to a particular provider. Not only are they rooming with that provider when the provider's out on the floor, and not only are those patients belonging to that provider, but then they also belong to the medical assistant. Recently, we spent quite a bit of time really pumping out the medical assistant's role, and that took the work off of both the provider and the nurse. And more recently, I think maybe 2.5 years, we have added a RN to the care team. So every FTE of a provider will have 1.5 FTEs of a medical assistant, and I'll explain the 0.5 in a second, and 1 FTE RN. And even more recently, we have added a front office care team member to the care team. And this is really exciting moving forward, looking at how we can really, really expand their role. Not part of the care team are all these other members. We have patient navigators / health coach, which are not medical assistants in our system, but they have gone through a health coach patient navigator training, and we have one each of our primary care sites. And their role really is to pull a patient out of the room, do some, definitely spend a lot more time with them and figure out what their needs are. We have educators who are primarily RNs. We tap into our community health resources because obviously we can't do everything for the patient. Certain mental health providers, addiction counselors, and then most excitingly is we opened up a wellness center. I think we're going on 3 years now, where we're able to offer complementary and integrative health. Really exciting. I'll go to the next slide. Am I able to turn it? There. When we decided to impel our patients and really work in a care team, it was a really well thought out process. And we took the time to look at every single one of the roles and really define what they were responsible for, what they were experts at, and what was the highest level of responsibility we could give them according to their scope. So a team representative, our front office, they are really in charge of health information. They are customer service, first basis, really helping the patient navigate through our complex system. Our medical assistants are, only doing the traditional medical assistant role, but we're expecting them to be a manager of the patient's experience as well as managing the provider's day. They also have responsibility for their patients. So they have a list of all of their patients, and using our registry and various reports, standing orders, they're ordering lab, diagnostic imaging, referrals, etc., immunizations. Our nurses are writing, and it's going to be interesting moving forward, seeing how that continues to develop. Getting into complex care management of our patients, doing home visits, hospital transitions, health education, and our providers are helping manage the whole team and really doing what they do best, with having that relationship with the patient.
Next. Developed our teams, it became very apparent, and something I resonated with Charles, that as you develop teams, the communication and the team dynamic becomes very important. Beyond one or two people or beyond one or two teams, the dynamics become very important. And learning how to dance together and how to work together is an important piece that we're trying to develop over time. I put this in here. This is Yo-Yo Ma and his rodeo, what does he call it, the rodeo goat rodeo session. And I put this in here. I saw him in concert. He's this, exciting person, but everybody else in the team was just having a blast together. They respected each other. They were able to communicate with each other. They all were experts in their field, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. We've actually developed some communication tools between the teams and have had to have some interventions with some of the teams themselves around communication and around personalities. And we're moving over the next 2 to 3 months into a very extensive coaching-based, mentorship-based team training at each site. We're very excited about. So I do think that that's a very important part of team development, is figuring out how to act as a team. Next slide.
A big part of what we're trying to do is take care of our patients, and a lot of that, most of that does not happen when they're sitting in front of us in the office. And so make sure that, if we're expecting a medical assistant or a front office member, for that matter, to do any sort of recall, in-reach, outreach, taking care of these patients' needs, ordering labs, knowing who their patients are, we have to give them dedicated time. So we have 22 care teams. Each of our medical assistants has 4 hours a week that's dedicated off-the-floor population management time. Specific tasks that they're expected to do, specific time frames that's supposed to get. Our front office, we've been working on different scheduling systems to give them, I think it's 2 hours a week for their dedicated population management time. And that would look like a number of things. Call patients back, scheduling appointments, our open access recall system for scheduling patients' appointments, and our nurses as well.
Talking about communication, as the team gets beyond one, communication gets more and more difficult. So we found something very effective for us is to give each team the ability to communicate with whatever method they use to want to use to communicate at that time. So we implemented an agency-wide instant messaging and communication platform called WebEx Connect, which allows staff to be able to quickly communicate with each other and escalate that to a video communication or a WebEx meeting if necessary. We have all of our staff providers and nurses have webcams on their tops, and some of our support staff also do, our referral staff and access coordinators, for instance. We've implemented iPads now in the room. We've just finished that. So now we have the ability in the room to do a quick video warm handoff with our behavioral health or our case manager, or do a quick instant message with my medical assistant saying I need this and this in the room. That's become a very important part of our communication and our effective team management.